Welcome and welcome back. Day 6 of the League reveals. We got ourselves the mobility relics here. There are 3 of them this year, which is pretty cool. So let's take a look. And yes, you may notice that my voice is a little bit different. I'm actually pretty sick today. So if at times I sound like a chain smoker, that is why. Now for the first relic, what we've got is the Clue Compass. This is going to allow you to teleport to any stash unit and follow the bard, assuming that you have the given areas unlocked, of course. And you are going to be able to teleport to the stash units regardless of if you have them built or filled out. So you're good to go on that. It also has the ability to teleport you to your current clue step, and this works by whichever the last clue you have read. So there's probably going to be some interesting things with that as well. Now, a couple other things that they list out on here. This is going to be true for all of these relics. You're able to use these teleport items while you are in the wilderness. There's no teleport restrictions there, so if you're in Deep Wild, you'll be able to teleport out using these, and then you can like last recall back, making it really easy to like kill some of those bosses that are really deep out in the wilderness. And obviously you cannot teleport to areas that you haven't unlocked. So for the Clue Compass, I went through and I looked to see if there was any stash units that are like mildly interesting in terms of their use cases. So for Mistalin and Karamja, your starting areas, it's generally pretty good for just moving around the map. You are going to have access to a bank through this via the Shiloh Village Bank because there's a stash unit right there. And you'll also be able to use this to make planks pretty quickly because there's a stash unit right next to the lumberyard. Within Mauritania, there is a stash unit right next to the entrance for the gargoyle boss. So that can be really helpful, especially I think since we're going to be farming that quite a lot, since that is going to be the echo boss. Another interesting one in Mauritania is there's a stash unit right next to the Barrows chest. Now, while you'll still have to go and kill the Barrows brothers, this can really help speed up those runs because you can just teleport to the end once you've killed 5 of the brothers, finish off the 6th one, loot the chest. So I think especially for Mauritania, this one is looking really strong. The wilderness, there is a stash unit in the KBD layer. Now, I don't expect that this is going to take you into the Echo layer, but this is going to be a really fast way to get out to that boss. There is also a stash unit chilling out on the Lava Dragon Isle, so that can be helpful, especially since you're probably going to pick this up pretty early. One thing I'll say about the wilderness, once you get access to something like a Burning Amulet, this becomes a little bit less useful, but it is still going to be the fastest way to get to KBD. And since KBD is going to be an Echo boss, I think that alone just kind of elevates this relic a little bit. For Asgarnia, there is a stash unit right outside of the Zami God Wars boss room, so you're able to just teleport right in there. I think that's pretty good. For End, you've got one next to the Soul Altar, so that can potentially open up some good use cases for making just a lot of soul runes. Karanwin, you've got a stash unit in the Death Altar, so again, another kind of like rune crafting boost. You can also use this to teleport to Zulrah pretty early. I think 2 out of the 3 relics actually allow you to do this, and it's not that big of a deal because you do eventually open up teleports to Zulrah anyway, just after killing him a couple of times. For the desert, there is 2 stash units that I think people will be looking at and think that they're really strong. One of them is on the Agility Pyramid, and one of them is in the 7th room of Pyramid Plunder. Now, unfortunately for both of these, it's not going to work that way. For Pyramid Plunder, it's just going to teleport you into the lobby, and for the Agility Pyramid, it's just going to teleport you to the start. So, kind of sucks for the desert. It would have been really cool to just see like a teleport, especially I think for Pyramid Plunder, where you're typically having to loot those last couple of rooms for tasks and also trying to get the Pharaoh Scepter. Would have been really cool to see that, but unfortunately we are not going to get that one. And Kandarin, I don't have a lot of love for Kandarin, but it does have an awful lot of stash units, so it's actually good for traveling around Kandarin. If you are the sole person out there who happen to pick it, good luck to you, sir. You enjoy that region to yourself. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with this relic is because it can teleport you to your clue step, and clues are going to be stackable in the league, it's actually going to be quite easy to get yourself very specific steps. So I went through all of the various steps, and I just kind of listed out a few of the use cases that I think would be particularly interesting with this relic. Obviously, you have to get that clue step first in order to do this. So you've got like medium clues in here, some hard clues here, masters, elites. So yes, you do have to get the clue step, but once you have it, you're able to hold on to that, and you can hold on to one active clue step of each clue tier. So this can end up being a really interesting way of creating some really good like skilling methods or killing some bosses or what have you. So one of the early examples that I think could be potentially useful is there is a clue step talking to Father Auric, which is next to the altar in Lumbridge. That can be good for just restoring your prayer, especially before you have access to other ways of restoring your prayer. There's another medium clue step quite close to the nature altar as well, so you're going to have that option as a rune crafting method. Kourend has kind of like an interesting blend. There's several clue steps along with the stash unit next to the soul altar. So in theory, there's a setup where you could have a teleport to the dark essence mine, have a teleport to the dark altar, and then have a teleport to the soul altar and essentially save yourself time for all of that walking. Kind of a pain in the butt to set up, but once you get the right clue steps, you don't have to mess with it ever again. Now, the wilderness has a lot of clue steps in it that are coordinate clues. So a lot of these I think would be very useful for killing the bosses, especially before you have last recall like fully activated if they end up doing something like scaling the last recall cooldown with your total level like they've done in a past league. So this can give you a nice method for getting out to different areas in the wilderness, especially for those really deep areas where it's just kind of a pain in the butt to get out there. There's not really a lot of teleport options for you. So for the wilderness especially, I think this relic is going to be really strong. There is also a couple of clue steps that exist out near the chaos altar. So if you're not going to go something like Gilded God, where you just have a stack of coins that you're using on this, then this can be really helpful to get you from like Shiloh Bank back out to the chaos altar to be able to use your bones. As Garnia, there is a master step that is close to the Ceradome and God Wars. So you won't be able to skip the 70 agility requirement because it's in sort of like the middle floor and there's 2 agility jumps that you have to go down. But this is, again, just another way to kind of help benefit you in terms of killing this boss really quick, especially if we don't have access to last recall, or maybe it has a really long cooldown and you just can't be bothered skilling yet. And then kind of similarly with these other ones down here, so like Fremnik, you have a step for the lady who's sitting next to the astral altar, another good rune crafting method for you. A couple different ways to get yourself towards the bosses faster, so like Muspah, you can teleport to some of the NPCs that are right at the top in front of the stairs that take you down into the Muspah area. And there's actually an elite step, which is right next to the DK ladder. So if you have that step, you can essentially just teleport into that boss. And again, when we have echo bosses, I think we're going to be farming these a lot, and we don't quite know how last recall is going to work yet. So you may not have that option available to you, especially early on. So I think this is a really good way to get yourself out to at least several of the echo bosses in some of these areas. The second teleportation option we have is Fairy's Flight, which is one that we ended up getting last year as well. So this lets you teleport to any fairy rings, any spirit trees, or any tool leprechauns. And with this, you are going to auto-complete the Tree Gnome Village quest, so you're not going to have to worry about like having Kandarin to teleport to the Grand Exchange Spirit Tree or something like that. Most of the spirit trees are in Kandarin anyway, but just like a quick little shout out for that one. Now, there's not a ton of super cool use cases for this. You do get mildly easier access to the Abyssal Sire because there is a fairy ring there. You're going to have access to it when you get the starting area. Kind of similar with Zulrah, you're able to teleport to the fairy ring. For Fremnik, you're able to teleport to the Tool Leprechaun that is next to the herb patch. But I think the big selling point for this one, there's a lot of stuff in the game, so there's a lot of teleportation options for you there. Really, really good for mobility for a lot of areas. Really good as well for farming. So if we end up not having a farming relic, or you don't end up picking that one, farming's kind of a pain in the butt to train, and this just kind of takes away all of the pain of training it because you essentially just teleport right next to all of the farming patches you could ever want. Now for the last one, we have Bank Heist, which is a new one. This is going to let you teleport to any of the deposit boxes, the bank tellers, or bank chests. Now, for this one, again, there wasn't a whole lot of interesting use cases that I could see. It was fairly good for mobility for a lot of different regions, and there is a bank next to Nex. So if you're in Asgarnia and you want to farm a lot of Nex, that can maybe help you get out there. Something I will say, though, about Asgarnia and the God Wars dungeon, there's a good chance that you'll have access to enough combat achievements that you'll be able to get a teleport through Gommel's Hilt out to the God Wars dungeon, so I don't know that these are particularly strong, but it does definitely help a little bit. Now, this is going to look like a lot of information here, and it is. I don't expect you to necessarily like go through and look at all of these. I'm not going to talk through them all, but I just wanted to put this up here as a reference. When I looked at all of the different teleport spots, this is how I would rank these based on the area that I was in. So like for Mistlin and Karamja, we've got the Compass one. I would probably take this one if I was really focused on activities in this region. The Fairy Flight is definitely a close second. And then the Bank Robber one, it's okay. And so that's how I've lined these up for all of these different areas. Now, it's safe to say that yes, you are taking multiple areas, so you can kind of like look at your path and see how I've ranked these for the different areas that you're taking and decide for yourself. One other thing that I want to show you and how I kind of came to the conclusion for which of these relics help which areas. I went through and I put some pins on the map for each of these relics just so I could more easily see where some of these teleports end up going. So like with this one, this is for the bank relic. And you can see all of the different little highlights in here. I've got one for each of the different relics. So I've got one for the fairy ring, which you can see here. And then I've also got one for the stash units, which you can see here. Now, the wiki does a great job of showing these things. I just kind of wanted to condense everything down into one layer so you're not having to click through, because some of these things will be like on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. So it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to track down. And likewise, especially with the banking one, there's not really a good map right now that shows where all of these locations are. So if you want to see these yourself, I'm going to have them in my Discord, so make sure to join that if you want to like click through these maps and see how it looks. But in terms of my blanket recommendations, for Fairy Flight, really good for mobility in general, really good especially if you hate farming. I myself hate farming, so this can definitely be that thing that kind of gets me to actually go and farm stuff. This loses some value if you end up taking Korend, of course, because Korend already has a lot of ways to train farming. This will also lose some value if they end up having a farming relic that maybe like insta-grows your crops or something like that. The bank relic, I personally found is a little bit weak. It's still good for transportation. It's especially good for Korend and Varlamore, so if you end up going some sort of combination, maybe you do like Korend, Varlamore, Fremnik, this one I would probably be thinking about. But in general, for mobility, I found for most areas, Fairy Flight tends to do a little bit better. And even with that, I think the clue relic is probably the most interesting. It's going to help you do clues faster. That's like a really nice benefit of this, and it still kind of gets you around the map. Some of the areas are a little more sparse than others, but the potential with this for holding different clue steps and getting some really unique like skilling methods out of it, or some really unique boss killing paths, I think generally I would recommend the clue relic. And to come back to this, I mean, you can see on a lot of these areas, it actually does fairly decently for teleporting you around compared to the other two. So I think a lot of folks are going to be able to get value out of the clue relic in particular. But again, I would highly encourage you, take a look at the maps that I put together, take a look around the wiki, and see which one you think works for the areas that you're going to pick. And of course, for the different relic tiers, this is what I'm expecting. Normally we see these sort of mobility ones on tier 2, so that's where I'm slotting these in. But that is all I've got for you for today. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more Leagues content. Again, I've got my Discord link down in the description below, so if you want to see those maps, then definitely join that. I am also going to be streaming the start of the League. It is going to start on November 27th at 6 a.m. Central Time. I'm going to be starting my stream a couple hours after that at 9 a.m. Central, so if you want to join me on my Leagues journey, kind of hang out, have a good time, then you will find me here. Make sure to subscribe. But with that, thanks for watching, and I will catch you tomorrow if I'm not super dead and my voice is gone. Oh my god, dude.